Rick and Morty has always been kind of gross. But one thing the show has almost always done is not aim its toilet humor directly at the audience. That is, until this most recent season where ridiculous gross-out poop humor has taken the center stage. As opposed to season 1 that featured virtually no poop humor until the penultimate episode. So what exactly happened here? Well, to start, toilet humor, or poop humor, tends to cover any and all humor that involves feces, urine, and flatulence. I know I shouldn't have to explain that, but if I don't, some of you will pretend to be really dumb in order to start an argument about it, so here we are. Toilet humor is something that is generally considered childish, immature, lowbrow, or simply not funny at all. Rick and Morty is a show that has a reputation for supposedly having a reputation for being a show for smart people. This reputation for having a reputation is essentially a meme of a meme about fans of the show who take the sci-fi stuff a bit too seriously and believe that because they enjoy it, it makes them more intelligent. Many will argue that the show is intelligent for its plot, others for its story, some for its use of humor, and many will argue that it's none of those things, that it's just like any other show out there, simple entertainment. The question isn't really about whether or not the show as a whole is intelligent, though, but rather whether or not toilet humor can be intelligent, and if its use brings down intelligent shows, or shows in general. Until recently, the toilet humor was utilized almost exclusively as in-world humor, as opposed to humor directed at the audience. In-world humor is when a character is doing something specifically to be funny to himself or to other characters within the show, as opposed to doing something that isn't funny to him that the audience would then laugh at. When toilet humor first started appearing in the show, it was used mostly by Rick himself, often for his own amusement, with this being highlighted by him laughing at the jokes. Season 1 holds virtually no toilet humor, as we said, with the exception of Close Encounters of the Rick kind, where they travel to a world that is made up of butts and feces, and one of the Ricks, Doofus Rick, is accused of coming from a world where people eat feces. It's not until Season 2 that farting for his own amusement becomes integrated into Rick's personality. This can be done for a number of reasons. First is characterization, to help highlight a certain personality type a character may have. And the second is for cringe humor aimed at the audience. You can see this a lot in shows where someone purposely tells a bad joke or uses a really ridiculous pun, then waits for laughter from the other characters, and them rolling their eyes or walking away is what we the audience are meant to laugh at. And the same can be said of the fart humor used in the show. To me personally, Rick's use of toilet humor always felt more like a thinly veiled excuse to include it in the show itself, a way to tell these jokes that the writers wanted to use, and then when they're accused of being lowbrow, they can claim that the joke wasn't meant to be funny, that it's just Rick's character who finds it funny. As the show goes on, they use more and more of it, both in character and directed at the audience, with Season 4 dropping the facade almost entirely and featuring poop jokes that are just for the audience, with the characters in the show being subservient to them. Episode 1 was nothing important towards this change, but Episode 2 ran it straight into the wall, with the entire episode being about Rick working through his issues as a shy pooper when confronted by another man using his private space toilet. The episode blurred the line as most of the humor wasn't just about the act itself, but rather jokes that stemmed off from the plot line about this pooping. But it was enough to break down the barrier between the audience, the jokes, and the writers, with future episodes showing Rick growing a second anus just so he could fart twice, and the most recent episode ending on an over-the-top poop joke that ends with the title characters defecating on their living room floor because they think they are dying as eggs are supposedly coming out of them. Now, there is an argument that toilet humor can be clever, and I'm not saying that it isn't ever the case, but being clever doesn't make it any less crude. But humor isn't intelligent just because it isn't crude, which I think is the main misconception that is propelling this debate forward. The heart of the issue here, if there could be said to be one, is more an issue of being uncomfortable with this type of humor, finding it gross, and therefore having a negative reaction to it. The humor is crude, so using it frames the show as low class, which people then twist into being about whether or not it is smart or intelligent humor. Part of the humor for its early use seemed to be that Rick was the most intelligent man in the galaxy, but his humor was entirely crude or even just dumb. His idea of getting back at an alien that imprisoned him in his own mind was making a butt appear and fart in his face, really highlighting that smart people don't have to have smart humor or even classy humor. Despite the popular opinion being that toilet humor is not smart, the show seems to be using its smartest character to give its audience permission to find this stuff funny, telling them that they aren't less intelligent for laughing at these jokes. It's a way for the writers to tell its audience that they are still smart for watching this show. And to be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Rick and Morty. The humor is extremely subtle, and without a solid grasp of theoretical physics, most of the jokes will go over a typical viewer's head. His personal philosophy draws heavily from Narodnaya literature, for instance. The fans understand this stuff. They have the intellectual capacity to truly appreciate the depth of these jokes, to realize that they're not just funny, they say something deep about life. As a consequence, people who dislike Rick and Morty truly are idiots. Of course, they wouldn't appreciate, for instance, the humor in Rick's existential catchphrase, "Wubba lubba dub dub," which is itself a cryptic reference to Turgenev's Russian epic Father and Sons. I'm smirking right now just imagining one of those addlepated simpletons scratching their heads in confusion as Dan Harmon's genius wit unfolds itself on their television screens. What fools! How I pity them. And yes, by the way, I do have a Rick and Morty tattoo, and no, you cannot see it. It's for the ladies' eyes only. And even they have to demonstrate that they're within 5 IQ points of my own, preferably lower. Nothing personal, kid.